Welcome to Green Noise, a podcast series from CapeNature that is bringing nature to life, and we use white noise to try to sleep better, but green noise to make life better.
You're as high as Victoria Falls at some.
Don't take that out of context about the penguins in ICU.
We basically give penguins medical aid.
Welcome to Green Noise, a podcast series from CapeNature, which is giving voice and giving life to the stories that nature has to tell, and the wonderful people often involved in CapeNature projects or working with CapeNature who are doing their absolute best to look after the beautiful environment that we have in and around the Cape. This podcast series is about making bold statements and giving voice to nature, sustainability, and conservation. And on this episode today, we're going to talk about, when we think of CapeNature, very, very often we think of the land. And when we think of the Cape, we very, very often think of physical nature reserves. But an enormous part of conservation, particularly in the Cape, is our literally iconic ocean and all the work that needs to be done to look after and conserve marine wildlife, particularly in the face of climate change. But what we're mainly going to be talking about today is in the face of human waste, pollution that ends up in the waters and affects all kinds of marine wildlife, from little plankton all the way up to the sharks that I am so terrified of, only because when I see that little black flag on Surfer's Corner and I'm on the back line, I'm thinking I really hope the shark spotters have got their glasses on. And we've actually got shark spotters here today, but let me introduce you to two of my wonderful guests who do excellent work in making sure that we educate people about how not to destroy our oceans and how to look after marine wildlife for the marine wildlife's sakes, but also for our sakes, because it turns out that what is happening in the ocean has an enormous effect often on human health and the way that we can interact with our environment. So firstly, I'd like to welcome somebody who I've been told official title on his contract is Captain Fanplastic. Yanga Gceya is here. Thank you so much for being here. You are a partnerships manager working in and around ocean conservation. Is that right?
Yes, thanks, Dan. I'm so excited to be here. Yes, I work at Captain Fanplastic as a partnership manager, and Captain Fanplastic turns ordinary people into positive pirates for the environment.
Positive pirates.
Positive pirates.
Excellent.
For the environment. And that means we really are good pirates that tend to educate people towards being connected to nature, as well as preserving marine pollution from ending up in our ocean spaces.
Okay, amazing. And we also have Taryn van Neel, who is one of the shark spotters. It's the coolest job, I have to say. Like, you get to watch the ocean all day, feel good. Do you guys still have a hut by Boys Drive looking down on Surfer's Corner?
We do.
Okay.
It's our iconic lookout point.
Yes, and
Yeah.
It always makes me feel safer going surfing that there's somebody there looking over me from above. You're the educations manager for Shark Spotters. Tell me a little bit about your role.
That's correct. Hi, Jan. It's a pleasure to be here. So I'm the education manager for Shark Spotters. And of course, there's a lot of misconceptions around sharks. People still fear sharks when swimming. And of course, Cape Town is iconic for its beaches. So a lot of people flock to the beaches during the busy festive season, so it's really important that we improve beach safety along the coastline. And also what's important is changing perceptions around sharks and changing behavior and the way people think about sharks.
Yeah, I mean, I recently actually read an article about how sharks were not a modern terror until the movie Jaws. And the movie Jaws was so huge that it created a phobia in human beings, which has changed our relationship with sharks, which are honestly, frankly, just not out there to get us. Like, that is not their reason for existence. I mean, all of the surfers always get told the reason why you might be in trouble is because from the bottom on a surfboard, you look like a seal. It's not because they see a human and go, I'm going to be terrible to humans. I hope everything I just said is true.
100%.
Okay, good. Cool, guys. So we're going to talk about marine wildlife conservation today. And in particular, I want to talk about, or at least ask you two about as experts about this undeniable relationship with what humans are doing on land and how it affects marine wildlife, particularly through waste and pollution. And we'll start with Captain Fanplastic, because it seems like plastic pollution in particular is a really good place to start. What is the relationship between the way that we behave on land and what happens in our oceans?
I'm glad you asked, Dan, because there's a staggering stat that 80% of all litter found in the ocean is from land-based activities. Because people obviously live on land, but the downstream activity or how this litter then ends up in the ocean is the connection that we all have with nature, and in particular this massive blue planet, that even if you're in Limpopo, your waste is going to be washed down into the ocean through watersheds, through the wind. We've seen the magical powers of plastic flying. So I think the connection is that we need to really be conscious about the way that we consume things, the way that we purchase plastics, because that in itself, that there's 1 million plastic bags used or purchased every minute, that's insane.
Wow, I didn't know that. That is terrifying.
So I think our work is to then conscientize people about these things, to think about these things in their buying behaviors, in their living sustainably on Earth.
It feels like marine protected areas are not enough, because even if you have a marine protected area and then suddenly there's a ton of plastic going into it anyway, you're struggling to protect from that kind of thing, right, Yanga? Is that true?
I mean, one of two ways you can see it. And I think Taryn will talk about species conservation in that regard. But I think creating these safe havens for species to be able to populate once more because of the effect of our eating habits also helps. So, and then we're able to then monitor the amount of litter that exists within these MPAs or marine protected areas. So I think there is a correlation of creating these safe havens for species to repopulate, as well as the upkeep that we need to be doing with organizations such as CapeNature.
Super interesting. Taryn, as far as I understand, Shark Spotters is not just about spotting sharks. You guys do a ton of other really important research and information gathering.
Yeah, we do.
Please tell me all the things that you guys look up and try to figure out.
Oh, sure. Do we have more than a few hours?
Yes. Well, no, but yes.
So, initially, Shark Spotters is a safety, research, conservation, and education organization. And our main focus, yes, is to improve beach safety along the coastline. But we do much, much more than that. Of course, sharks, they are an apex predator. They vital indicators that showcase, if there's a healthy shark population, it reflects a healthy ocean.
Okay.
So sharks are very important in that regard because they help maintain the balance within the ocean and they help manage prey population.
You can kind of learn about like the rest of the ecosystem and how well it's doing.
Oh, 100%. And it will definitely have a ripple effect on other marine species.
So you actually want to have sharks around because that means that the ocean's doing quite well.
Oh, yeah.
That's so interesting because we always kind of just assume that if a shark is around, then that's just bad.
Yeah.
Bad for the fish, bad for us. So if there's a healthy shark population, is that because there are enough fish in the water? There's enough seals cruising around to maintain that kind of population?
If there's any disruption or we see a decline in the shark population, we can definitely look at there might be other factors or issues or threats such as overfishing or habitat destruction or habitat loss or pollution to show that, if shark species are declining, there's definitely threats taking place that affect their population.
I'm going to have a little fanboy moment for a second. Okay, and beyond like counting shark sightings and that, are there any other kinds of research strategies that Shark Spotters do, particularly in relation to pollution?
Yeah, so the research that we do at Shark Spotters is key to what we do in terms of the conservation work as well as the safety. And so our research, we tag sharks using acoustic transmitters, and
What is an acoustic transmitter?
and we
That's
use
cool.
BRUVs, which stands for Baited Remote Underwater Video Systems.
Okay.
So the acoustic transmitters we use to tag the sharks, and it helps us. It gives real-time data, and so it helps us to assess the shark movement.
So how do you tag a shark? I don't want to be anywhere near a shark.
Yeah. So we do have a research vessel that goes out into the ocean.
Epic.
Yeah. And once they catch the shark, they would turn it upside down.
Okay.
Yeah. So they would turn that up because it goes into a trance.
What?
Yeah.
Do you drug the shark?
No.
Why does
So
the
if
shark
the shark is upside down, it goes into a trance.
Really?
And so it doesn't have much motion.
That is an absolutely terrible Achilles heel if you're an animal and you go
But
upside down.
it's fairly safe.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
take the shark and then we release it
Interesting.
again.
That is fascinating. Okay. And please, Yanga, tell me about Captain Fanplastic. So what is the program? How does it work? How did you become the captain? Can anybody else be the captain?
No, 100%. We want everyone on board on the captainship. And it really started with a very simple dad joke.
Okay.
So why are pirates called pirates?
I don't know.
Because they are. And that's how the story. It's really that simple.
Okay.
And our founder's neighbor's son had said this joke to him.
Okay.
And then it triggered this idea of an avatar that can motivate children to think about a future for ourselves, for this planet, as well as creating a balance with that.
Interesting.
So the program was born out of this love for adventure and the mischievous nature of children and how they like that. And
That's
to
cool.
date, from 2018, we have been able to replicate this program in 14 countries.
You counted very quickly.
Across Africa, Asia, as well as Europe,
Wow.
and soon the US. But how it works is we
Yes.
use storytelling and gamification as well as action to ensure that children are really the custodians of the environment that they ought to be. Because we know the power of children. If they read a message from school that says, listen, they say that if we use the straws, we're going to kill the turtle. That message is going home to mom and dad,
Yes.
for sure. And so using children and giving them these tools to have these conversations about how we can conserve our planet and live within balance is key. So by using stories, so we write stories and produce them in-house. And then we have
How do you produce them? Is it video? Is it cartoons?
oh no,
Is
it's
it-
just a good old storybook.
Oh, I see.
Because by using stories or transforming these young people from the immediate environment, we're able to transform them to a world that they feel empowered in. I'd like to have the book now. Then I can.
Oh, the book. Dan missed his cue. Here's the book.
So this is one of the books. So the books are really written around this concept of this pirate, obviously, that goes onto land as well as sea to then mitigate the plastic pollution that exists and how it affects its marine friends. So in this book that you have in your hand, that's Captain Fanplastic and the Quest for True Treasure, where he truly understands what true treasure is, which is
see.
how to refuse, reuse, repurpose, and recycle plastic.
I see.
And then it's also linked to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, where children are able to learn on specific SDGs. And we have a few of them that we directly create curriculum for the children to be able to engage in. So, for instance, here you see Ricky the Recycler, who then counts what trash or treasure can be derived from the waste that is created.
I see.
And specifically, I think this matches well with the work that we're currently doing with CapeNature, with the Don't Be Trashy campaign, where we're wanting all the rangers within the reserves to be able to go to the communities and drive this message of how do we create value out of the waste that we're producing.
There's a great page where it looks like a turtle is creating an eco brick.
There we go.
Which I appreciate.
That's Finn, the trusted turtle friend.
And
to
Finn is just
Captain Fanplastic.
just for anyone who doesn't know what an eco brick is, it's like a plastic bottle and you push in so much plastic in it that it compacts and becomes a brick that can be used and has been used for house building, if I understand correctly, in
Yes,
different
100%.
places.
It's so in the story, actually, they build a barn for Moody the cow,
is
so that
that
she
the-
can teach all the other farm friends not to eat the plastic that exists on the vast lands. So
Sure.
we tend to mimic real life in order to inspire children to think about what they can do in creating a way that we can mitigate waste.
It's really smart. Okay, and then so this gets distributed in schools. Do you give the books to schools? Do you go in and read the stories for kids? Like, what is the actual program?
Yes, so through a number of business models, so sponsorships with obviously corporates or CSI budgets or grant funding or I guess governments as well, because that's really key in kind of like ensuring partnerships, because most of the work that we do is in public primary schools.
Okay.
In a 4-hour program. First,
Sure.
they are transformed to plastic pirates by being read to these stories.
I'm imagining like all the kids line up and they get a cutlass and a pirate's hat and an eye patch, and then they're pirates.
And then from there on, Danny should say,
Look at that. For
we
those
go
of you
onto a learning component where they learn how this plastic, as the concepts in the story, talks about how it affects like whale sharks and
Yes.
turtles and the ingestation and seabirds and so on. And then the last bit is then we do an arts and crafts or applied innovation, as I like to think of it, because if you're able to take your waste and create something out of it, then you're giving them tools to think about what value can be created from the pollution.
I see.
The last bit, which is always exciting, is a treasure hunt where we clean up our immediate environment so that they feel connected to the story of that we were telling them, as well as the story of they are connected to nature and they really have the power to change things.
I love how genuinely thrilled you are and like fulfilled by this work. It's great. For those of you who are listening to the podcast, not watching it, at one point when I laughed very loudly, inexplicably, if you're listening, not watching, Yanga took out a bottle cap and put it in his eye socket to have a little bit of a pirate patch, which was great.
Yes.
That's really, really such a cool program. So how can people get more involved and support it?
We have a number of ways that we
Definitely.
We definitely see people coming on board on the captain's ship. So we have 3 areas of impact. So someone can either fund a school program to go into communities, or someone can sponsor DIY boxes. So we've created kits that children can have access to literacy materials,
Interesting.
as well as cleanup materials. So it's like a program in a box that can be sponsored to any kind of like group. And then the last bit is we create special campaigns at the end of every quarter. So thrice a year or 4 times a year, we'd have these public beach cleanups that are gamified again, pirate inspired, and have high energy. And then we work with the vast stakeholders, your CapeNatures, obviously your Western Cape governments, the city of Cape Town, and so on, because there's so many of us that do this amazing work, and collaboration makes it A1.
That's amazing. Okay, so like in my mind now, I'm imagining a kid gets radicalized by
That's what we
Captain
need.
Fanplastic at school, and then goes home and is able to convince their parents or family about the urgency of what is going on. But then they need that kind of like, okay, but what is the bigger picture? Kind of like the adult version of Captain Fanplastic about like what is really going on in our oceans. And it does feel to a degree like the work that you do, Taryn, with Shark Spotters is where that happens. So tell me a little bit about the education like role that you have and the work that Shark Spotters does in a similar vein as like stage 2 of this process.
Our mandate is to educate and teach about shark conservation and shark safety. However, we do delve a little bit deeper in terms of, because sharks belong in our ocean, and so we talk about ocean conservation in general. And so in terms of the education work that we do, we also engage with the public. So we are quite active during the busy festive season, there are a lot of crowds on the beaches. I mean, there's a lot of people on the beaches. There's also a lot of waste. We're bound to have a lot of waste. So it's very important that we're quite active. And so being on the beaches, we have a wider audience that we're able to engage with and raise awareness about sharks in particular, but also threats and impacts that impact shark population and shark conservation. So we focus on the educational and the awareness aspect, but also looking at how do we change their behavior.
Sure.
When it comes to
Humans, not sharks, yeah.
when it comes to 100%. So how do people change their behavior? We engage with the public, the general public, so it could be like beach goers, beach visitors, international and local visitors, but at the same time also we educate school groups,
Okay, cool.
community groups as well, And we also take part in like career expos,
Okay.
and sharing information about marine science and getting more students to do maths and science.
Yes, that's cool.
And then as well as we engage, and what we love to do is engage in coastal beach cleanups. And so we have we collaborate with CapeNature on the Don't Be Trashy campaign, which is fantastic, it's awesome. But also at the same time, integrating an educational component while doing the cleanup, because it's very important for people to really understand how the actions impact the ocean, whether they live on land or sea.
How do education programs for coastal communities differ from when you're talking to communities in inland areas?
So they do differ, and in particularly if we are engaging in education within coastal towns, because they have a direct link to the ocean, they stay close to the ocean, so the educational awareness around them wanting to protect the coastline or engage in beach cleanups or protect marine life. So they have a direct affiliation, or because they stay close to the ocean. But when it comes to engaging on education programs in inland, it differs, where they would look more to how their actions impact the ocean. So they would most likely looking at river pollution, how do my actions impact rivers, or they might look at what they could do to prevent waste from ending up in the ocean. And they, of course, they would also look at conservation initiatives that they could look at taking part in, because they don't have a direct link to the oceans, but they would look at potential conservation initiatives as well. So it's very important that we look at that interconnectedness between the land and ocean, and how everything that happens on the land impacts the ocean. So for us at Shark Spotters, it's not about what we educate or raise awareness about, but how we do it.
Sure.
So we want to transform in the way that we want to delve deep into, sort of awaken, something in them and ignite a passion for the love for sharks or the love for the ocean.
I get it.
And then what they could do about that.
For sure. So how exactly, like, I'm imagining now I'm trying to awaken this inner love for a thing that I've mainly experienced through not wanting to see that black flag.
Oh, yeah.
At Surface Corner.
The white flag.
Sorry, the white flag. Yes, you can't get the flags wrong, because then you're not leaving when you should be leaving. Tell me a little bit about how human waste and our litter and pollution can and does directly affect sharks.
So there are various threats affecting the shark population, and mainly it's due to human activity. So one of the major threats, for example, is like overfishing.
Okay.
And so where the sharks are being targeted for their fins, or they are caught accidentally through bycatch. You get habitat destruction, where either coastal development takes place or pollution. And then you get various threats. Obviously, pollution is huge problem. So sharks are harmed by plastic waste, so either through entanglement or ingestion. And then you get other threats such as chemical pollution. From like agricultural runoffs or industrial waste. Then you get nutrient pollution as well.
What's nutrient pollution?
So nutrient pollution, so this comes from like either fertilizers, and of course this happens in land, and it directly ends up in the ocean. So the fertilizers or sewage as well. And so this causes harmful algae blooms, and then it's really hard for sharks to find prey.
Oh, because everything else is dying.
Yeah. And then, of course, you have climate change as well, which is also another threat.
Yeah, I know that, like, in the last 3 or 4 months, my family is a very ocean family. Like, free diving and surfing and 5 days a week at the ocean. There's been a lot of talk about, like, sharks potentially moving elsewhere because their prey is moving elsewhere. Fish is going in different places because of the warming of the ocean, the changing of the currents. And maybe also some orcas who are having a really good time eating shark livers in the Eastern Cape.
Yeah.
How have you seen climate change affect the way that sharks in and around the Cape and CapeNature's kind of jurisdiction? How have they been affected recently?
We particularly work within False Bay.
Okay.
We've also recently expanded to Plettenberg Bay along the east coast. And so there's various indicators and that we can see in terms of a various phenomenon.
Yeah.
If I call it in such a way, a phenomenon that takes place. We constantly find also a lot of, you'll find pufferfish that ends up along the beach as well, that happens once annually. There's now, we have the seals that have rabies as well. Yeah. So there's various phenomena that can, indicate in terms of there's different changes that's happening in the ocean, and we need to be aware of all of these changes happening. But particularly, yes, sharks have been disappearing from our oceans since 2017, even before 2017. And there were various scientific theories in terms of their movements. They are quite active along the east coast, but we haven't spotted a shark for the past few years now.
Sure.
And so one of the reasons or scientific theories was, is it because of climate change, because our water temperatures are heating up? Is this why there's a shift in their movement, a decline in their population? And so this was obviously one of the things to take into account. And there were various other things that were taking place during the same time that sharks were disappearing from the bay, and so such as the demersal longline fisheries,
Sure.
Which catch sharks, and various other factors.
Sure. There's so much to take into account.
Yeah.
It's a very intense job. And I would love to know how people can get involved in and support Shark Spotters better, because it sounds like you guys are doing such vital work that needs more resources, more support, more volunteers, more skilled people to work.
100%. So Shark Spotters, we are quite a community-orientated organization. A lot of the work that we do and how we go about improving beach safety or coastal management, we work with we work closely with municipality, we work closely with other organizations, we work such as Captain Fanplastic and CapeNature, to look at how we could partner to strategize and to share expertise or share resources in terms of what we do. So we are we're an organization that loves to get involved in collaboration. So having organizations partner with us, that is one way you could get involved. We have various projects under, safety, conservation, education, and research. And so by partnering us is one thing. We do receive donations from the public to sponsor a child, for example, to come and engage on shark conservation, etc. Cool. And also in terms of the research, we're doing scientific inquiry as well. So we do get a lot of interest from the public that wants to get involved in terms of what they can do and support the research programs. And then, of course, just having a wider audience. So in terms of how people can know a little bit more about us, they can follow us on Facebook as well as Twitter and Instagram.
That's great. And Yanga, like something that it's a through line of both of you speaking is about how human beings need to, or personally in our own lives, try to be a little bit less wasteful and try to change our consumer habits to literally buy differently. But it also feels like it would be great if some massive retailers changed their ways. Because you said 1 million plastic bags a day. I know that different retailers are really trying now, some of them, to be better for the environment, go greener, and be more thoughtful in the way that they literally package our goods. But I imagine, wouldn't it be amazing if a retailer got involved with one of or both of you guys in CapeNature and really tried to go, cool, we're going to put a line in the sand, we're going to use some brown paper bags or something like that just to make a difference.
Yeah, in an ideal world, we would love to have
the end goal.
That's the ultimate aim.
Big
That's the
collaborations.
Oscar-winning. Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I must say that there has been some kind of small commitments in terms of these work, and like you're saying, in changing habits. But I think much more than that, we really need to go beyond that, about thinking about how we are doing things, because I feel like we really need to radicalize business.
I said that.
Yeah, exactly. We really need to think about what's different now, because this conversation has been going on for many years. And again, if you look at a awareness point of view, we've been saying to people, do not litter for nth amount of times.
Sure.
So I think there needs to be a change of what is available for people to make decisions on, and then the way that we do business, because I think there is a rigidness that is happening there. And one of the interesting phenomena that are happening within conservation, as well as the way that we're doing things and systems change, is circular economy, which looks at...
What is that? I'm not smart. What's a circular economy?
Which looks at really how do we create an ecosystem that's literally circular, that no wastage or of resources, either natural or man-made, leave that cycle. So, for instance, if we are taking a product like maize, I'm just thinking out of the head.
Go for it. Let's come up with a great idea on this podcast
from
right
maize, we can create sweet corn, or we can create mealie meal, or we can create whatever we're creating. But then the waste, the organic waste that comes out of that goes into recycling.
Sure.
But the tractors that are used to plow the maize are also then, the elements of that are able to be repaired, are able to be recycled, are able to be used in other parts of society. And that's what the circular economy and the systems thinking that most people are thinking about when we are thinking about tackling the pollution that exists.
Sure. And do you feel like, and I'm sure you're going to say yes, but I'd love to hear how it works, is like how, like, I always find that kids are the most malleable. They've just like, they're willing to go, okay, cool, that sounds amazing, let's do that. But kids, obviously, they need to be exposed and introduced to a passion. And I do find that for a lot of people, the ocean is that thing on the edge of the beach, and in this part of the world it's often too cold to get in. And yeah, we know that there are sharks and there are fish and there are octopus and there are jellyfish, but unless you go to the aquarium, like, you're not going to see it when you go to the beach. Do you find that it's like an imagination project? It's like trying to spark the imagination of young people so that they can then more truly understand how thrilling and wonderful the ocean is, and then care about it and do something good about it.
Yes. I mean, obviously,
I knew you were going to say yes.
That is, that's ultimately it, and that's a formula. And I think humans in general, we need to have a sense of story or adventure. Or a bird, oh, that's wonderful.
A bird just walked in and said to hear more about the ocean.
Or adventure, and that's why we love stories from a young age. We all grew up with listening to stories, or being told stories, or telling each other stories all the time, even in all sectors of business and work, that the concept of a story still continues. So, and it's the most, I guess, oldest form of transferring information, because it's been oral transformation or transmission for a very long time, and now we've evolved to podcasts and all of those things. So by then putting someone in a world that's like imaginative and blows them out of this current situation, we're able to break through barriers of environmental apathy, where people feel disempowered to create action or create change.
Exactly.
And then we're able to break through the rigid ways that humans tend to have of like, this is the way that we've been doing things, this is the way that it works, to then break molds to say, do you know what, this is also possible if we apply our minds a little bit. And then I think the last bit is really doing something beyond us, like showing that there's something beyond the ego and the person, but nature itself and its vastness and its beauty, that we're able to say, do you know what, that is a cause that I can put myself behind.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, it's so nice the way that you guys are using storytelling to change perspectives on things that are stale concepts. I love Shark Tales and I love Finding Nemo. Two absolute bangers. And I kind of think that like what South Africa as a whole, I'm in the media industry, have been for a long time in entertainment. What South Africa as a whole needs to do better is our entire society needs to start making stories that we can fall in love with, that are about here. And it would be great if we could get to that point of storytelling, of these extraordinary, really bewitching stories that are about where we are from. Taryn, I want to ask you one more question. Sure. Is if you could like have a genie wish right now to change the way that people think about sharks, like a perspective change, how do you wish that people would easily see sharks instead of these man-eating awful terrors of the ocean?
So, we spoke a little bit about threats, and of course, particularly we spoke also about plastic, which is harmful to sharks. But also the main threat is perception.
Okay.
So if people don't really understand sharks and why their importance and the role that they play in the ocean, they're not going to want to protect sharks. So it's all about changing perception. People need to start thinking differently. And if you'd notice, a lot of the animation movies or so forth that you watch around sharks are always set out to be
the villains,
the
bad guys.
100%. Where do you find sharks in movies that plays a different perspective or shows a different scenario, where sharks are seen as not as vicious monsters.
100%.
And obviously tracking back to the very first Jaws movie.
Yeah.
So even today, even though, various individuals, particularly the youth and particularly young age groups, they have not, most of them have, and when we engage with them, they haven't seen sharks before. They haven't encountered sharks. They haven't touched a shark before. They haven't swam with a shark before. So we are constantly asking them, and we often ask them, where does the fear come from?
Right.
And a lot of them would mention the fears come from ancestors. It comes from my parents that have the fear of sharks.
Interesting.
And of course, media and movies and animations, that plays a huge role. So it's really hard to change perceptions, but when engaging with the younger generation, they do have an intense passion and the love for these big creatures in the ocean with all these teeth and big jaws. And for us to, educate and raise awareness about how cool sharks are.
Yeah,
and,
for sure.
Doesn't matter how cliche it sounds, but the ocean is the shark's home. And so, getting that interaction with them around sharks are cool, sharks are awesome, and this is why they belong in the ocean.
Sure.
This is their importance. So that's very important to get across.
Absolutely. Thank you to both of you for such a fascinating conversation. I really, really hope that you listening and watching this episode of Green Noise go out and support and get involved in, or at least learn through these learning mechanisms of Captain Fanplastic and Shark Spotters, because learning is free. And learning makes a huge, huge, huge difference. Thank you to the both of you for the work that you're doing and for coming on the show.
I have one last request as my thank you.
Okay.
If you truly, truly mean it, we need to do an R. No, it doesn't. No, it's not like
we. Is it me?
Yes, obviously. I need to put it on my resume. I made Dan do an R. So how we do at all these school programs.
Okay.
If you want to be a pirate, raise your pirate hand to the sky.
Okay.
Cover your pirate eye and scream R. Fantastic. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
My friends are going to see that. Thank you for being here.